So yeah, I've been doing presentations on the Law of One, and which is also called the Raw Contact. There were recently books released called the Raw Contact books. This is probably in maybe 2019. I think they released the new versions of the books. A lot of people have the previous versions. All right, perfect. Okay, so yeah, I was talking about the Law of One. These books, the Raw Contact, were channeled originally 1981 to 1984. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of these books. Many of you have read it. How many people have read the books here? So yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. This was a very incredible channeled material done. The channeler was Carla Ruckert, and she worked in a team of people with Don Elkins. Don Elkins recruited people from a university originally that he was a professor at to do channeling experiments, and he got very good at it over many, many years. And he perfected it to such a degree that they wound up receiving a kind of contact which was unprecedented for them. It was almost by accident that it seemed as though when they got the right energy together with the right team of people, an entity came in, and Carla challenged it. It was vibrating with the love of Jesus, and that entity came in, and it kind of brought her to a different state of consciousness where she was kind of out of her body in a trance state. And in that trance state, she was able to speak word for word, very precisely, the answers to Don's questions without having any conscious awareness of it. This is what a trance state is, basically, not having conscious awareness. So anyway, yeah, they called it a narrowband channel material. It was only questions and answers. And you can check it out more at llresearch.org or lawofone.info if you'd like to read the books. But that's mainly what I like to talk about. So this is some pictures of Carla, Don, and Jim. That's Carla in trance, or before she's in trance, and then what it looks like when she goes into trance with a towel over her head. Some more pictures of their environment, and the Jim in the front top. Jim is still alive. He's the only one who's still alive today, and he does a fantastic job teaching about the material too. So today I want to talk about the context of a nature of ascension. Since it's kind of an ascension conference, I want to make sure everyone kind of has a basic overview of what the Law of One is saying. And I'm going to talk about the nature of manifestation, how everything is kind of coming out of our collective unconscious mind. And then I'm going to talk about the nature of the hierarchy of the mind. There's different layers to the mind that I'll go into that kind of explain more the nature of reality when you understand the nature of the mind. And this leads into the archetypical mind, the archetypes of the evolution of the spirit. I'll talk about, if you've never heard of this, it's kind of related to the Tarot. The archetypes of the Tarot are what we're talking about, basically. And the nature of identity and the spectrums of religious identity beliefs, because I feel like identity is a very, very important topic for us to kind of continuously be shaking up our concept of. Because identity is, I feel, where we have all of our limitations coming from, and where we also have all of our potential coming from when we break free from the shackles of our false belief systems around ourselves. So I would say at this point in our history, we are divided more than ever. This is crazy. I'm sure you guys can see. I'm not going to talk too much about all this kind of stuff, but you can tell that right now we have people in the media, political figures being seen as saviors or antichrists. It's almost like you have to pick one or the other in this culture. We have so many strong debates over election integrity right now. People can't, I mean, it was the same way for the last two election cycles. The debate over the election just went on for years and years. And it's I believe we're divided by grand spiritual design, that this division is not just by accident. It actually is a catalyst for us to be boosted by recognizing what it is that's actually important to us. And do we really want to be fighting each other anymore? So we're kind of drawn to this temptation to fight each other more and more, I feel. So obviously the lack of the jab is the ultimate fear for some people, or getting the jab is the ultimate fear for some people. And this is the way you maximize the catalyst around the jab, so the jab has the most spiritual potential. Yeah, and the trustworthiness of all our institutions, media, medical establishments, claims around scientific evidence, and freedom versus security, freedom versus safety is still the raging debate these days, getting more and more so. That one's not working. So I do feel that these are mutually exclusive belief systems people are forming, and increasingly we're creating our own realities around these belief systems. In session 17, they kind of described the ascension time and our present time as we're leading up to what they call the harvest or the graduation. In these years leading up, they say you will find a sharp increase in people with fourth density energy potentials. I'll describe that later. There will also be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized people and social complexes due to the polarizing conditions of the sharp delineation between fourth density characteristics and third density self-service orientation. So I was very interested to notice this last year it's not just people who are being more and more polarized. It's social complexes becoming more and more polarized, which means all of the ways that people form around belief systems into social complexes, these systems themselves are becoming more and more polarized. And this was all predicted back in 1981 that this would be happening at this time. So I think, let me go back a slide actually. There was also a quote here, when Don asked, has the vibration of the basic, or photon, the basic element of all light, increased in frequency already? And Ross said, this is correct, and back in 1981. It is this influence which has begun to cause thoughts to become things. As an example, you may observe the thoughts of anger becoming those cells of the physical body complex going out of control to become what you call cancer. So increasingly, thoughts are becoming things. And increasingly, as we have separated thought systems, we will have increasingly separated things in our experience, increasingly bizarre realities being created out of people's belief systems as we move into this time. So that's what we're seeing. And I don't think it's anything to worry about. I think it's a harbinger of what's about to come. I think we have to cherish our power to co-create, though, at this time. We cannot be brought into fear. We have to remember that we have a lot of power right now. Ross said the further an entity has polarized, either, when they say polarized, they mean either to service to self or service to others, the more easily an entity may change polarity. And this was kind of counterintuitive because they're saying literally a person who's more and more negative or a person who's more and more positive has an easier time slipping into the negative or slipping into the positive on the opposite polarity, because the more power and awareness the entity will have in these conditions. Those truly helpless are those who have not consciously chosen a path of service to self or service to others, but who repeat patterns without knowledge of the repetition or the meaning of the pattern. And I think fear is one of the chief causes of that. So when we're stuck in cycles and they're related to fear or anxiety or whatever, we have to recognize what is this pattern and choose to help others, choose to love others, and through our desire to serve others, we break out of those patterns. And we gain the power to co-create our new reality. As the great societal consciousness blockages and deceptions break down around us, we must avoid the temptations to fall back into patterns of self-righteousness, fear, or frustrations, because I feel these will all prevent us from stepping into our power. And I feel the only great awakening that matters is the awakening of the heart. Everything else is just kind of in the cultural awakening happening right now around the truth of reality. It's best just the outer clothing on the deeper spiritual shift that's occurring. So we need to keep that in focus, that this has always been about the transformation of the heart when we see dramatic things changing. So I actually have been conducting a survey of the population since 2017 when I first started doing these presentations. I did a survey asking people, I commissioned a survey, do you believe extraterrestrials are currently interacting with humanity? And from 2017 to 2019, there was no statistically significant shift as I was conducting the survey. But from 2019 to 2021, the shift has been dramatic. Since 2019, there has been a dramatic exponential increase in the number of people who answer this question in the affirmative. Do you believe extraterrestrials are currently interacting with humanity? So this is a huge step forward. Since 2019, it's been, the yes answers have been up by 23%. The unsure answers, I'm not sure or maybe, went up by 24%. People who say no went down by 15%. And people who say this is ridiculous went down by 16%. You can see the bottom two lines here are the ones who say no and this is ridiculous. So we're still, so we're still quite a ways from getting. Well, I should say this is significant because right now these two bottom lines add up to about 50%, a little over 50%. So that means we're right on the verge of saying with more confidence that half of our population is becoming open-minded or slightly open-minded to larger realities. So I think once we cross that 50% line, it's going to be very magical transformation starting to happen. I would say that we are divided through our attachments and identity disorders. I want to talk about identity a little bit here, because I feel like this is how we are manipulated. Manipulations through emotions tied to belief systems is only possible through identification with the belief systems or groups that have those belief systems. And they said in session 67 that the normal gambit of the fourth density minions, which are basically like the demons that are trying to influence at all times. And I went through this concept in my 2019 presentation that you can look up. But there's basically, you know, a lot of, like 1/10 of the galaxy is service to self oriented in nature, and they do act as a catalyst for the rest of the galaxy, and that they can only affect us through our own free will to choose their beliefs, to choose their thoughts that they send us. But we always have the opportunity to request information and ideas and thoughts which are of a positive or a negative nature. And when we move in the direction of requesting things of negative nature, we open ourselves up to temptations from these entities who are willing to give us those temptations. But the normal gambit of attack is the tempting of the entity or group of entities away from total polarization towards service to others and toward the aggrandizement of the self or of social organizations with which the self identifies. So if we remove our identity in organizations, if we can remove our identity with belief systems and just become infinite in our identity, become completely humble, completely open in our identity, we can reduce our potential to be tempted into negative directions. They say nearly all positive channels of groups may be lessened in their positivity or rendered quite useless by what we may call the temptations offered by the fourth density negative thought forms. They may suggest many distortions towards specific information, towards the aggrandizement of the self, towards the flowering of the organization in some political, social, or fiscal way. These distortions remove the focus from the one infinite source of love and light, of which we were all messengers, humble and knowing that we of ourselves are but the tiniest portion of the Creator, a small part of a magnificent entirety of infinite intelligence. So these distortions of identity can manifest through all of our attachments and karma, all forms of unforgiveness, all forms of selfish desires. And to get more metaphysical in the nature of this, it's basically chakra or energy center imbalances. They use the word chakra and energy center interchangeably in the books. And it's usually always the laser pointer. It's usually always the lower three that we're working with the most in our society. They've explained that the orange and the yellow are the primary energy centers which become blocked and which become, they relate to the way we see ourselves, the way we see other people in society, and those can relate to the way we attempt to control people or desire to be controlled, the way we possess people or desire to be possessed, and lack of self-acceptance definitely can show up in the orange. Taking things too personally shows up in the orange. Feeling guilt or shame can show up in the orange. So there's many different forms of identity belief systems. We can become overly identified with our beliefs, with certain personalities or people, identified with experiences, identified with our achievements and the things we've done in our past, identified with what we see as our status, even if we see ourselves as a starseed, we can become overly identified and manipulated even through our identification as being a particular kind of being, because we are actually an infinite being. And to limit yourself to the idea that you have to be something is then the opportunity for you to limit your heart opening towards those who are not seen to be like you. So we can be overly identified with even the thoughts in our head and future outcomes and our belief systems around that. So I would say identity is the central teaching and mystery in the Law of One. They say all things are one. There is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity in truth. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, any portion of creation of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in a holographic picture, the one infinite Creator, which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. So I want to talk about harvest a little bit here, the nature of what they call harvest or ascension or graduation. They said the fourth density is a vibrational spectrum that we're moving into. Your time-space continuum, which is our metaphysical reality, your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and your sun, our solar system, into this vibration. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically realign its vibrational webs so that the Earth will be fourth density magnetized, as you might call it. The actual Earth magnetic system is connected to our consciousness, and it's getting an upgrade right now. The first harbingers of this were approximately 45 years ago before 1981, which was 1936. 1936, it started increasing. The energy is vibrating more intensely through the 40-year period preceding the final movement of vibratory matter through what they call the quantum leap. So this quantum leap is what I feel we're coming close to, and I believe that this is connected to what Corey Good has described as the solar flash. And this can be controversial, but I do feel that there are much more intense shifts that are on their way, and that it could even wipe out technology in the process. And this could also shift the poles by 20 degrees. And this is another interesting thing. Not many people I hear ever saying this, but Corey Good specifically said in one of his presentations, it looked like they showed him about 20 degrees. And he didn't know that the Law of One books actually specifically said 20 degrees is what the shift would be. And it was so significant to them that they recommended aligning Carla's head when she was channeling, align her head 20 degrees east of north, because of these future vibrations that are emanating back in time from that strong future timeline that we're moving towards. So there is a boundary between the densities. As one approaches a boundary, an effort must be made to cross that boundary. The necessary for graduation is an ability to use, welcome, and enjoy a certain intensity of the white light of the one infinite creator. This is like walking up a set of stairs, with each has a certain quality of light, but to walk up that stair, to cross that light, is difficult. There's a threshold we have to cross, and in order to do that, they say the faculty of faith or will needs to be understood, nourished, and developed in order to have an entity which seeks past the boundary of third density. And this is also related to the catalyst, the spirit archetype I'll talk about in a few minutes here. They say the catalyst of all our spiritual growth comes from faith. They say we're also in a mixed harvest scenario. Not every planet in the universe goes through this kind of thing. Approximately 10% of harvests are negative, 60% of harvests in our, I should say our galaxy, not our universe. 60% of harvests in the galaxy are positive, or graduations, you could say, and approximately 30% are of a mixed nature, with nearly everyone in that mixed harvest being of a positive nature, but there's still this negative elite at the core that is causing this to be a mixed experience. In the event of mixed harvest, there is nearly always disharmony, and therefore added catalyst in the form of your so-called earth changes. And they say that these negative beings, they're basically asking for negative information. They're receiving it in the form of attitudes and philosophy of these negative entities. And this is the service to self philosophy. These become the elite, and through these elite, their attempt begins to create a condition whereby the remainder of the planetary entities are enslaved by their own free will. So I do feel that there are people around today still who believe they're doing us a favor by enslaving us. They feel this is their idea of positive philosophy, that we need to be controlled because this is just how the world works. So I want to share a dream that I had back in 2016 that might be significant. I feel like maybe I was supposed to share it because it was kind of prophetic, I feel, shockingly prophetic. But so basically, I was just starting to help out Corey Good with some of his tech stuff, and I was getting very excited about the potential of what was possible when we start working together more through some of this, these opportunities that were becoming available. And right when I was getting very excited about this, I had this dream. And in this dream, everyone, it seemed, was a zombie. Everyone was turning into a zombie in our whole world. It seemed like there was a zombie disease. And people weren't scary as zombies. It was just like everyone was turning into zombies. So I think the metaphor is kind of obvious there, that people have always been kind of turning into zombies. But what I noticed in the dream was that there was a town where people were not turning into zombies. They found a way to avoid it. So I felt like I had to go to that town, I had to go to that metaphysical area and figure out what's going on there. And I went there and I found a group of people who didn't care to tell people about this light, but they found a light in the floor. And they were all trying to work with this light in the floor and getting confused and tangled in it, not sure how to work with it. And as I looked into the light in the floor, I had the most profound experience of my life up until that point. I've had a few other like that lasted longer since then, but in this particular one, as soon as I looked in the light, it was as though I had this massive awakening to infinite intelligence, and then it was like I immediately saw all of my karma put out in rooms in front of me that I needed to work through. And I kind of knew this is just the nature of dreams, that you're seeing your metaphysical junk on display that you're going to be dealing with. But I didn't want to believe it. It was hard for me I woke up distressed from this dream. The other times I had this kind of experience, I was not distressed. But this dream, I was like confused, and because I saw a lot of drama around Corey Good in the community, and I saw it broken up into 3 sections, and I saw how challenging it would be to work through some of this weird energy, this weird messy energy. But I eventually, it's been very helpful to think back to that and some of the aspects of that, to understand this really was just about me trying to get back to the light. Working through and forgiving everybody is the path back to the light. And so that's kind of what the dream meant to me. But I also feel like I understood more after having this dream, and some others like it, what they call the indigo body, because ultimately we all have access to infinite intelligence when we awaken our pineal center in the indigo chakra, and they also call this the form maker. They say entrance into the incarnation before we're even born requires investment or activation of the indigo ray or etheric body, for this is the form maker. So also after we die, we go back to the form maker. We go back to a higher source of ourselves, which is then able to see and plan out our incarnation by having that higher perspective. But actually, I believe everything that we experience is coming from our higher self working through the basically the crown chakra of our beingness, which is connected to the infinite nature of our beingness, connecting down in order to create our reality. The indigo body is a microcosm, they say, the logos. And the logos they describe as the mind of the galaxy or the love of the galaxy. Like the one mind that we came from is the logos. The indigo body is the microcosm reflection of that, the logos being the macrocosm. The intelligent energy of the mind-body-spirit complex, which is also, that's kind of like a description of a person, a mind-body-spirit complex. But a mind-body-spirit complex totality, so they say the totality is the entirety of every experience we will have, could have, had alternate timelines, alternate reality versions of us. That's the totality of what we are. So the intelligent energy of our totality draws its existence from intelligent infinity or the creator. So intelligent infinity is their word for the infinite intelligence that has created everything. And the aspect of us that is coming from that is creating our reality. The free will of the creator may be drawn upon by the indigo, form-making body, and its wisdom used to then choose the appropriate locus and type of experience which this co-creator or sub-logos, as you so carelessly call a person, will take. So the chakras are very important to understand. I probably won't spend much time on this, but we have to learn to tap into the inner light. They say there's a filtering process from the cosmic energy that's the outer energy, and then the inner light, which is coming down, and it's where those two, the outer and the inner seeking meet, that we then have the Kundalini experience, the perspective that we're taking. And so each experience will be sequentially understood through each chakra, first in terms of survival, then in terms of personal identity, the orange, then in terms of social relations, the yellow, then in terms of universal love, the green heart center, then in terms of how the experience may get free communication, the blue center, then in terms of how the experience may be linked to universal energies, which is the indigo that I've been talking about, the universal energies of how everything is connected to the universe. And finally, in terms of the sacramental nature of each experience. Chakra balance leads to more work and more inner work and indigo work. So as you start working through your lower energy issues, your lower energy center issues, with minimal adequacy, the red, orange, yellow, and blue, with the addition of the green for positive, the negative polarity does not use the green heart center, they block it out. Then you move on to what they call the indigo work, the indigo center. The adept then begins to do less of the preliminary or outer work, which has to do with function, our functional reality out here in the physical world, and begins to affect the inner work, which has more to do with being, our beingness. As the adept becomes a more and more consciously crystallized entity, it gradually manifests more and more of that which it always was, has been since before time, that is the one infinite creator. So the more and more we work on our being, the more and more we see our nature as being the one infinite creator. So that's why they give exercises like gaze within a mirror, see the creator. Constantly be able to see why are you not able to see yourself as a creator, and work on that kind of things and see others as the creator. And they also say the discipline of the personality is threefold. 1, know yourself. 2, accept yourself. 3, become the creator. So these are the steps that we're always working on. Knowing yourself, understanding your issues and distortions, accepting them, forgiving yourself, forgiving others as they mirror that distortion within you, and then becoming the creator, which is, they don't explain that exactly, but I think there's some mystery behind that phrase. But Ra had a training program on Venus and back in Egyptian times that they delivered through the Tarot. This was their training program for people to understand the nature of their beingness. And I feel that I've kind of had a breakthrough around this, that there's almost like a hierarchy to understanding our identity. And understanding the archetypes of the major arcana is one way of working on our identity more. They said when they initially were recommending this exercise, it was not divination. It was not how people do Tarot today, where you're just shuffling out cards. That was not at all what they described. That's not even what they recommend. What they do is they recommend you understand and you study these images very much. That's the first step, is the presentation of the images, one after the other, so that the fundamental relationships between mind, body, and spirit could be discovered. And the Law of One, Book 4 has the details on this if you'd like to learn more about it. It's kind of hard to get through, but I'm beginning to dig into it more and more, and I feel like I'll do more teaching on it. I'm trying to process it myself. It's very dense. But they say once firmly grasped, once these archetypes are understood, we encourage the initiate to learn to become each archetype, and most importantly, to know as best as possible within your illusion when the adoption of the archetype's persona would be spiritually or metaphysically helpful. So they're saying that at any given time, our identity, we could learn to become archetypal in how we see ourselves. We could learn to understand the more purified aspect that is the way in which the galactic mind set up our experience. So there's a flow to each of the archetypes of mind, body, and spirit, which is the matrix, is the framework or the record or the foundation for all of our experience. The potentiator card, the potentiator image, is that which increases the power, effect, or likelihood of the matrix, brings potential to the matrix. The catalyst is that which occurs that can lead to experience, based on the matrix of the potentiator having created a situation for catalyst. The experience, obviously, that's what we are having all the time. The significator is that which reveals the significance of the experience, and then the transformation is what happens once we make a choice through that, understanding that significance. And then the great way is a way of seeing the bigger picture of what's going on. So this is the hierarchy. This is a little chart I made. They basically describe the mind of the galaxy, the logos at the core of the mind. Not to say it's the smallest, because it's a small circle. It's the infinite mind, but it's within all the other minds. So I should say, out at the outer edge here, we have the conscious feelings, emotions, and intellectual thoughts. We have the individual memories and intuitive mind, just below the surface of our conscious mind. And below the surface of the intuitive mind, we have the Akashic, racial, or planetary mind. And we have a presenter, Bill Foss, who will be talking about the Akashic records tomorrow. But that's connected to the entire consciousness of the planet. So this planetary mind is deeply embedded inside of our intuitive mind. We can all tap into that. And the archetypical mind is the mind that was designed by the Logos, the mind of the galaxy, in order to create the basic foundations of the framework of how everything would go down, how all the experience would be occurring. The archetypical mind is part of that mind which informs all experience. So every experience we have is rooted in this part of our identity. The archetypical mind is a repository of those refinements to the cosmic or all mind made by this particular Logos, and peculiar only to this Logos, this galaxy. Thus, it may be seen as one of the roots of mind, but not the deepest, but certainly the most informative in some ways. The other root of mind to be recalled is that racial or planetary mind, which also informs the conceptualizations of each entity to some degree, and that's the Akashic mind. So talking about the archetypes just a little bit, I probably shouldn't spend too much time on this, but the matrix of the spirit is a very interesting image here, because it's basically like a scary image, but you see there's some people here who have broken chains. They don't necessarily see that their chains are broken. They call this the devil in the tarot. And at first I had problems with this, like why would there be a devil card? But they say the matrix of the spirit is difficult to characterize since the nature of spirit is so motile, is less motile. The energies and movements of the spirit are by far the most profound, yet having more close association with time-space and metaphysical dimensions, they do not have the characteristics of dynamic motion. Thusly, one may see the matrix as the deepest darkness, and the potentiator of spirit, the next card, is being the sudden awakening, illuminating, and generative influence. The fructifying influence of light upon the great darkness of the spirit is very often not as apparent as the darkness itself. And that is why there's a whole archetype around darkness, is because to understand the difference between darkness and light is still very significant. So the potentiator of the spirit is the lightning-struck tower, which they say they prefer to just call lightning. It's the sudden awakening. And I would ask a question: can you penetrate the darkness by becoming lightning? Can you see yourself as lightning itself? This is a meditation I've been doing more and more. See yourself the way that lightning works. You come in, you are light. There is just this bright light, and that's what you are. So I feel to see yourself as the way lightning brights up the darkness, coming into those around you, brightening up their lives as the lightning. I think that's a very valuable tool that we can pull from, and at kind of an infinite degree. We can keep doing it more and more, becoming light itself, because we are actually light itself, we don't see it because we have so many distortions of the mind layered on top of that aspect of ourselves. The catalyst of the spirit is next. I prefer to call that card faith. That's symbolized as a star. Can we become faith itself and remain able to choose higher spiritual perspectives continuously through that faith? Experience of the spirit is next. They call this the moonlight. This relates to the power to discern truth from shadow. So we can be lost in shadows in our spiritual experiences, and actually say most of us do get lost in shadows. The progress chosen by many adepts becomes confused path as each adept attempts to use the catalyst of the spirit. Few there are which are successful in grasping the light of the sun, which is the significator. The sun is the next one. By far, the majority of adepts remain groping in the moonlight. And as we have said, this light can deceive as well as uncover hidden mystery. So can you become that which uncovers the hidden mystery? And really that's related to the radiance of the sun, which is the significator. Ra described the significator as that which either radiates or absorbs the love and light of the one infinite creator, radiates it to others for the service to others polarity, or absorbs it for the self for the service to self polarity. You're dealing with a very great abundant light which is not deceived any longer. Don asked, would this be a measure of this process of radiation or absorption be the measure of the power of the adept? And Ra said this may be seen to be a reasonably adequate statement. So I would say we can ask ourselves, can you become as radiant as the sun? Can you work towards that and see yourself as the sun and continuously recognize I'm just a part of the sun and I'm here to bring infinite light to the planet? The transformation of the spirit is called the sarcophagus. It's a sarcophagus in there. The sarcophagus symbol itself may be seen to be the material world, if you will. This material world is transformed by the spirit into that which is infinite and eternal. So you see this guy's being called out of the sarcophagus. The infinity of the spirit is an even greater realization than the infinity of consciousness, for consciousness which has been disciplined by will and faith is that consciousness which may contact intelligent infinity directly. There are many things which fall away in the many, many steps of adepthood. We of Ra still walk these steps and praise the one infinite creator at each transformation. So all of the beings in the galaxy are working through this process of being more and more transformed into the infinite nature of the spirit. So can we become that which transforms the material world into that which is infinite? In the great way of the spirit, Don asked if this represents the contact with intelligent infinity, and Ra said this is correct. Although one may also see the reflection of this contact as well as the contact with intelligent energy, which is what comes out of intelligent infinity, which is the universe, or is what you would have called it before in this card, it's called the world. So this literally means we're becoming the world when we meditate on this card. We are literally recognizing when we reach intelligent infinity that we are all that is and we're all that is manifest. The great way of the mind, body, or the spirit draws the environment which has been the new architecture caused by the veiling process. So I realize this is kind of like the dream that I had, where this architecture that I tapped into by looking into the light is coming out of this this great way, this intelligent infinity, which represents all of the manifest creation. So can we become one with the whole world? And I would say that these identity conceptualizations have been taught by religions in many, many different ways. I talked in my 2017 presentation about Ramana Maharshi and how he was teaching self-inquiry, questioning who am I, and letting go of every layer of your false identity. And so self-realization is kind of the word used in the Eastern traditions for discovering more about the true reality of your identity. And I feel that mystical Christians increasingly pursue what they see as a death to self to become part of the body of Christ. Now this is interpreted in many different ways, but I see it as a hierarchy. I feel like as people get closer to the truth, they more and more see themselves as the love behind Jesus. They can see themselves in that way and let go of all those other aspects of themselves. I feel that this is what people are working towards in religion, at least, is letting go of those old aspects of themselves and taking on the new identity. And so I was impressed, John chapter 17, it actually says Jesus was praying, Holy Father, keep them in your name, which you have given me, that they may be one, even as we are one. The glory you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one, even as we are one. I in them and you in me, that they may become perfectly one. So this oneness aspect, I think, is what Christians are often missing. And I think the characteristically Christian identity pitfall is to emphasize separation from others and not the oneness of others. And it's very interesting to me that Jesus was talked about recently by Corey Goode and David Wilcock on some of their YouTube channels. David Wilcock said Dr. Pete Peterson, one of his top insiders, visited a base in Antarctica where there are ETs living and working there. And those ETs had told him that the reason they were here was that, quote, the mind of the galaxy had embodied in a human being, the Logos, and they meant Jesus, and that this, quote, doesn't usually happen, and it's very exciting, and they wanted to stop by and see what was going on. And Corey Goode said, he was shown this in a vision. He said when he very first had a blue avian appear in his living room, he's been consistent in his story, he said this being believed, he challenged them in the name of Jesus. Who do you say Jesus is? Who do you serve? And the blue avians bowed to him and showed him a visual. They showed him a vision. And he says they believed Jesus was the incarnation of the mind of the galaxy, the Logos, and it was a big deal. ETs came from all around to watch and see what happened, because it happens on other planets now and again, and it's always unique, and it's always a beautiful kickstart to the evolution in our star system. And so I feel that Jesus is mostly aligned to the significator of the Spirit. He's representing that which is radiating love, even though if he is coming from the Logos, he's coming to represent that infinite pure love that we all are. So as we identify as Jesus identified and see ourselves as love itself, that allows us to basically break free of all of our blockages. So I think that's basically why we have this story of Jesus. He came to model only pure love. They talked about him in the books. They said when the entity Jesus decided to return to the location called Jerusalem for the holy days of its people, it turned from work mixing love and wisdom and embraced martyrdom, which is the work of love without wisdom, which they describe as the fourth and the fifth density aspects of our reality, because Jesus felt that this was the most important mission to take on, was to completely model love and not try to say, I will temper my love by avoiding being martyred, by avoiding allowing myself to be killed at an early age. He chose that to teach us his unlimited love for us. That's what they're saying. Jesus incarnated with the plan of martyrdom. There is no wisdom in this plan, but rather the understanding and compassion extended to the fullest perfection. One may observe the greatest amount of understanding of which this entity was indeed capable, taking place as the entity in meditation felt that he knew the hour had come for that to be fulfilled, which was its incarnation. We do not imply that this course of unbridled compassion has any fault, but affirm its perfection. It is an example of love which has served as a beacon to many. And so I feel this is the significator of the significator of the Spirit, the Son being modeled. And it's a funny synchronicity that the Son, S-U-N, and the Son, S-O-N, are the words to describe it. And so Ross said that, Don asked the question, in our culture there is a great saying that he will return. Can you tell me if this is planned? And Ross said, I will attempt to sort out this question. It is difficult. This entity became aware, Jesus became aware that it was not an entity of itself. It did not see itself as an entity, but operated as a messenger of the one infinite creator, whom this entity saw as love. Jesus saw himself as purely a messenger of love. That was his identity. This entity was aware that this cycle was in its last portion and spoke to the effect that those of its consciousness would return at the harvest time, which is now. The particular mind-body-spirit complex you call Jesus is as what you would call an entity, not to return except as a member of the Confederation, occasionally speaking through a channel. However, there are others of the identical congruency of consciousness. They will welcome those to the fourth density. This is the meaning of the returning. So I personally believe that many of us in this room are coming to represent that same consciousness of the fourth density unconditional love vibration. That's what we're here for. They say there's going to be a transition period. They said it would be 100 to 700 years before we get fully to the fourth density energy, but we're kickstarting it very strongly at this quantum leap time right now. At this space-time nexus, there are beings incarnate which have begun fourth density work already. However, the third density climate of our planetary consciousness is retarding the process. At this particular nexus, the probability of vortices indicates somewhere between 100 and 700 years as transition period. This cannot be accurate due to the volatility of your peoples at this time. And they say the creation of the green ray density bodily complexes, the upgraded bodies, will be gradual. It will take place beginning with your third density type of physical vehicle, and through the means of bisexual reproduction become, by evolutionary processes, the fourth density body complexes. But I do feel that we can speed this up significantly by living in love. So I think a lot of our job here is reducing the amount of time it takes to get to this, what they call the social memory complex, when kind of all of our minds become unified, when we become all loving as a planet. They say actually the negative entities, they come here to mess with us, mess with the social complexes before they reach the stage of achieving social memory. So it's very significant that they can no longer mess with us once we achieve this social memory stage. And Don asked, at what stage does the planet achieve social memory? And Ross said, a mind, body, spirit, social complex. I'm out of time. I'll finish. A mind, body, spirit, social complex becomes a social memory complex when its entire group of entities are of one orientation or seeking. The group memory, which is like the Akashic mind, the group memory lost to the individuals in the roots of the tree of mind, then becomes known to the social complex, thus creating a social memory complex. The advantages of this complex are the relative lack of distortion in understanding the social beingness, and the relative lack of distortion in pursuing the direction of seeking, for all understanding distortions are available to the entities of the society. So this is basically like saying, everybody who's been having profound revelations back into history, it's embedded in our social mind, the Akashic mind, planetary mind, and that will become available to all of us from a conscious level once we all become unified and start to operate as one mind. I'll end with this. I believe Don asked, is it possible to help an entity reach fourth density level in these last days? And Ross said, it is impossible to help another being directly. It is only possible to make catalyst available in whatever form, the most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with the Creator from the self, less important being information such as we share with you. We ourselves do not feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. We encourage a dispassionate attempt to share information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. That you attempt to make this information available is, in your terms, your service. That attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. We cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is of the moment. It is an opening to intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self, for the self. Another self cannot teach or learn enlightenment, but only teach, learn information, inspiration, or a sharing of love, a sharing of mystery, a sharing of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begin the seeking process that ends in a moment. But who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? So that's my presentation, and I don't think I have time for questions.